Oh, dear one, this old quilt on my lap, its colors soft and fading like the light of evening.
It carries more than just warmth. Each stitch is a whisper of time, each thread a memory that refuses to let go. I've mended it for decades, patch over patch, like the years themselves, until the fabric became something more than cloth. It became my story. When my granddaughter Sophie visited last week, she looked at it and laughed, gentle but careless. Gran, she said, brushing her fingers across a corner frayed to threads. This thing's ancient. You should let it go. I smiled, but my heart ached. Let it go? Oh, if only she knew. This quilt remembers things even I have tried to forget. It began long ago in a house that smelled of red clay and rosewater, in a small Georgia town where cicadas hummed lullabies and the river song never stopped. I was Evelyn Rose back then, barefoot, curious, and quiet, the youngest of 5 children. The world felt endless, framed by the rustle of cotton fields and the clatter of Mama's sewing machine. Mama was a woman of strong hands and gentle eyes. She could turn the most tattered scrap into beauty. Every piece has a story, Evie, she'd say, her voice soft as the cotton she worked with, even the torn ones, maybe especially those she taught me early, how to thread a needle, how to pull the line through fabric smooth and sure, never rushing. Stitch slow, she'd whisper. If you hurry, you miss what the cloth is trying to tell you. I didn't understand then, but I do now. Life's fabric frays fastest when we rush. I remember one summer evening clearer than most, the one where the world changed shape. The kitchen smelled of cornbread and soap. My brothers argued over supper. My sisters hummed hymns on the porch, and the air outside shimmered with fireflies. I was sitting at Mama's feet, sewing the corner of a new quilt she'd begun after Daddy passed. The light caught her silver hair just right. She looked like the center of peace itself. This patch, she said, holding up a faded blue square, was from your father's work shirt. Her thumb brushed it gently. He wore it the day Samuel was born. He came home tired but smiling. She smiled then too, though her eyes were far away. Daddy had been gone 5 years, taken by a mill accident that left Mama quiet for months. I was too small to remember much, just the way the house felt emptier, the nights colder. Why do you sew pieces that make you sad, Mama? I asked, watching her hands move with practiced grace. Her needle paused midair. Because, darling, sadness doesn't stop being part of the story just because it hurts. That night, when the crickets started their songs and the lamplight flickered, I watched her sew long after everyone had gone to bed. Her hands moved steady and sure, as if the act itself kept her breathing. Maybe it did. Years passed, and I grew into a young woman with Mama's patience and Daddy's quiet heart. I helped her with the quilts, learning to read the rhythm of thread and cloth. We'd sew by the window, light slanting across the wooden floor, and talk of simple things, of neighbors, gardens, and dreams that were small but real. Then one day the fair came to town. I remember it so clearly, how the air was thick with kettle corn and laughter, the Ferris wheel turning lazy against the setting sun. Mama had sold a few quilts that month, and she gave me $1 to spend. I didn't know it would buy me the first thread of a new life. He was there by the carpenter's booth, shaping something small from wood. His sleeves were rolled up, sawdust clinging to his arms. His name was James Porter, tall with a smile that made me feel seen, truly seen. You've got a gentle way with that knife, I said, my voice timid but curious. He looked up, eyes warm. And you've got an eye for detail, he said, holding up the carving, a little wooden bird. For you. It was rough-edged, not perfect, but full of care. I kept that bird in my pocket for years, rubbing its wings whenever I needed courage. James courted me with long walks by the river and promises whispered in the dusk. "We'll build a home," he'd say, "a place where stories can live." He was quiet like me, but his silence felt safe, like a warm quilt around the shoulders. Mama approved. "He's got kind eyes," she said once, smiling as she stitched, "and a steady hand. A woman can build a life on that." We married the next spring under the willow tree near the river bank. The town came with food and laughter, and Mama gifted us a quilt for our wedding bed. "Pieces of your childhood," she said, brushing my cheek, "so you'll always remember where you began." That quilt followed me everywhere, from our first tiny cottage to the farmhouse we built with our hands. Life bloomed there. Gardens, laughter, children. I stitched pieces of each memory into the fabric, a silent chronicle of love and years. But, dear one, life doesn't stay soft forever. The same hands that sow joy must sometimes mend grief. The war came, and with it, the letter. One cold morning, James kissed me by the door, his uniform smelling of starch and soap. "I'll be home before the harvest," he promised, eyes bright with faith. He didn't come back before the harvest, or the next, or the one after that. I sewed through the silence. Every night, I'd take one of his shirts, cut a square, and stitch it into the quilt. Each patch a prayer, each thread a plea. And when the telegram came, the one that said "missing in action," I folded the quilt tight and pressed it to my heart. That night, I slept wrapped in memory and the ache of waiting. I didn't know then that the quilt wasn't done remembering. It had just begun. The years that followed, dear one, were stitched with sorrow and survival. I often think back to those months after the telegram arrived, when the world felt hollow and even the wind sounded like it carried his name. I kept the house quiet, save for the hum of my sewing machine. It was my rhythm, my prayer, my way to keep the ache from swallowing me whole. The children tried to fill the silence. Clara was 12 then, old enough to understand the weight of loss, but too young to bear it. She'd sit by my side, her hands resting on my knee, her eyes full of questions she never asked. Samuel was 10, restless and wild, the kind of boy who believed his father might still walk through the door if he just wished hard enough. And little Rose, my sweet shadow, barely 7, always humming softly as she played near the window, her doll wrapped in scraps from the quilt. I sewed to keep the pieces of us together, each patch a moment, each thread a memory of the life we'd had before the war. The quilt became our family's anchor, the thing that still felt warm when everything else had gone cold. One evening, Clara asked, "Mama, will Daddy ever come home?" My hands froze mid-stitch. The needle trembled between my fingers. "I don't know, sweetheart," I whispered, "but he's with us here. Every piece of this quilt remembers him." She leaned closer, tracing a patch of his old uniform. "Then I'll help you remember." And she did. As the years passed, Clara grew into a young woman who sewed as I did, slow and careful, with meaning in every motion. She had my quiet and James's steadiness, but also a fire I'd never had. She'd talk about the world beyond our small town, about dreams that didn't end at the river. "There's more for us, Mama," she'd say, eyes bright. "I can feel it." I smiled, though my heart clenched. I wanted her to see the world, yes, but I feared it too. The world takes sometimes before it gives. Rose, my gentle one, stayed near. She loved the garden, the birds, the morning light on the porch. She'd hum hymns as she watered the plants, her voice soft as wind in the willows. Samuel grew strong, his father's hands showing in the way he worked the soil. Together, they kept me grounded when my mind wandered to old letters and faded dreams. Then came the drought. The river thinned to a whisper, and the crops withered under the sun. We did what we could, but the land seemed to mourn alongside us. One night, as thunder cracked far off, I sat by the window, quilt across my lap, sewing a patch made from the hem of my wedding dress, the last piece I had left of that day. My hands shook as I worked. Rose came quietly behind me, her small fingers brushing my shoulder. "Mama," she said, "why do you keep sewing when it hurts?" I looked at her, that innocent face, the reflection of all I'd lost and loved. "Because, my darling," I whispered, "it's how I remember who I am." That night, I dreamed of James for the first time in years. He stood by the willow tree, the one where we married, smiling as he did back then. He said nothing, but his eyes, they were peaceful. When I woke, tears wet my cheeks, and sunlight spilled across the quilt like a benediction. The war ended the following spring. No letter came, no body found. Missing in action became presumed gone, and life simply went on. The town rebuilt slowly. Fields came back to life, and so did we, in fragments. Samuel took over the farm, his hands firm on the plow, his heart steady. Clara married a man named Thomas, charming but restless. She moved 2 towns over, promising to visit, but seldom did. Rose stayed home, tending to me and the garden, her laughter filling the rooms that once echoed empty. Still, I kept sewing. The quilt now covered nearly the whole bed, a tapestry of color and memory. Patches from baby clothes, tablecloths, even bits of curtains from our first home. Every piece held a whisper, every stitch a heartbeat. When I ran my fingers across it, I could feel time itself. Then one afternoon, years later, Clara came back. Her face was pale, her eyes tired, the light in her dimmed. "Mama," she said softly, standing in the doorway, "Thomas is gone." I didn't ask how. I just reached out my arms and held her until her shaking stopped. Grief is a circle, dear one. It never really leaves. It just changes shape. She stayed with us after that, helping on the farm, helping with the quilt again. For a time, it felt like the world was mending, but peace, I've learned, is delicate. It unravels faster than we can sew it back. One morning, I found papers missing from the desk, deeds, receipts, and soon after, the banker came knocking. Clara had signed loans in my name. The farm was at risk. When I confronted her, she broke, sobbing, trembling. "I didn't mean to, Mama," she cried. I wanted what you had. The love, the home." I thought her words shattered something inside me. Not anger, but sorrow so deep it hollowed me out. I couldn't speak for a long moment. Finally, I said only, "You can't mend love by stealing its threads, child." That night, I sat alone by the quilt, the same one that had carried me through war, loss, and birth. And I wept. The candle burned low, wax pooling like tears. I ran my hand over a patch of James's shirt and whispered, "You'd know what to do." No answer came, only the creak of the old house and the sound of my heart breaking quietly in my chest. But still, I sewed, because even in betrayal, even in loss, there's always something left to hold on to, some thread of grace. And this quilt, dear one, it was holding us all together, even when we didn't deserve it. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges, dear one. Years passed after Clara's mistake, and though the hurt lingered like a scar, I found myself reaching for forgiveness. It wasn't easy. Forgiveness never is. But I'd learned long ago that carrying bitterness is like clutching a needle. You end up the one bleeding. Rose stayed by my side, tending the garden, mending the house, and reminding me that love, quiet and steady, can heal more than time ever will. Clara sent letters sometimes, apologies written in trembling ink, but I couldn't bring myself to answer at first. I'd fold them gently, slide them beneath the quilt, and whisper, "Not yet." It was Sophie, years later, who brought the light back into that memory-soaked house. A child's laughter can chase out ghosts faster than prayer sometimes. She was Rose's girl, bright as a sunflower and twice as curious. She'd follow me everywhere, into the garden, to the porch, even to the sewing room where she'd sit cross-legged watching my hands move. "Gran," she'd say, "why do you keep sewing the same old quilt?" "You already finished it," I'd smile. "It's never finished, child. Every life keeps adding patches until the end." She'd giggle, rolling her eyes like children do. "Then my Maisie gonna be huge." And I'd laugh. Oh, how that sound healed me. It felt like sunlight in winter. The years rolled gently by, marked by birthdays, harvests, and quiet evenings. Clara returned once, older, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes soft with shame. She brought a small box wrapped in brown paper tied with fraying twine. "I made this for you," she said, her voice trembling. Inside was a folded handkerchief, hand-stitched, uneven, but honest. I thought maybe I could start again. I took her hands in mine, skin against skin, and I saw her not as the child who had hurt me, but as the daughter I had once cradled. "We all tear the fabric sometimes," I whispered. What matters is that we learn to mend." Tears fell, hers, then mine, and in that moment, the years between us dissolved. That night, I stitched a piece of that handkerchief into the quilt. It felt right. As time marched on, the house grew quieter again. Samuel married and moved to town. Rose's children grew tall and busy, and the old willow by the river bent lower each year. My steps slowed, my hands trembled, but my needle still found its rhythm. I'd sew in the mornings when the sun poured through the kitchen window, and sometimes I'd talk to James. I kept my promise. I'd tell him softly, I built a home full of stories. And the quilt, oh, love, the quilt remembers us still. One evening, Sophie came running in from the attic, her hair wild, eyes wide with excitement. "Gran, I found your old letters." She was holding a bundle tied in ribbon, letters I'd long forgotten. She sat on the floor, untying them one by one, reading aloud the words James had written before he left. His handwriting slanted and neat. "My dearest Evelyn, I dream of the river, of your hands, of the quilt that keeps me warm in thought. If I don't return, remember, you are my peace." My breath caught. I hadn't read those words in half a lifetime. Sophie's eyes filled as she whispered, "He loved you so much, Gran." I nodded, unable to speak. "Yes, dear one, and he still does. Some love never fades. It just changes rooms." My breath caught. I hadn't read those words in half a lifetime. Sophie's eyes filled as she whispered, "He loved you so much, Gran." I nodded, unable to speak. "Yes, dear one, and he still does. Some love never fades. It just changes rooms." We sat there together, 2 generations stitched together by memory and time. The quilt lay across my lap, worn but alive, glowing faintly in the amber light of evening. A week later, I fell ill. Nothing sudden, just the body saying, "It's time to rest." Rose came every day, bringing tea and stories. Sophie would curl beside me, her small hand in mine, asking for tales from long ago. "Tell me about the blue patch again," she'd say, "the one from great-grandpa's shirt." I'd smile faintly. "That one's special, love. It's the beginning of everything."